Have you ever sat alone after a long day and thought to yourself, why am I always the one who gives? Not just time, not just energy, but pieces of yourself, your peace, your attention, your silence. We live in a world that rewards noise, urgency, and constant accessibility. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. The more available you are, the more invisible you become. There's a certain power, quiet, steady, unshakable, that comes from learning how to withhold, to pause before reacting, to remain emotionally still when others demand movement, to let the world knock and not answer the door. And that's where Stoicism comes in. Not as a trend, not as a performance, but as a discipline, a way of reclaiming your energy, your presence, and your identity. In today's video, we're going deep. Into psychology, into philosophy, into the art of becoming unavailable, and why doing so will shift your entire world. Stay until the end. The last tip is a game changer. What we're uncovering isn't just personal growth. It's spiritual protection. It's psychological clarity. It's the death of manipulation and the birth of sovereignty. This isn't about turning cold. It's about becoming clear. Let's begin. Part 1. The curse of constant availability. From the moment we're born, we're taught to be accessible. Smile when someone says hello. Answer when someone calls your name. Be polite, be helpful, be present, even when you're tired, even when you're broken, even when you don't feel like it. And over time, that conditioning becomes your identity. You become the one who's always there. The one who replies immediately. Who picks up every call, answers every text, shows up even when you're falling apart inside. But let me ask you something. What has that really earned you? Respect? Peace? Reciprocity? Or have you just become predictable? See, that's the thing no one tells you. Availability, when it's constant and unconscious, becomes a weakness. It tells people, I don't have boundaries. You can interrupt my peace whenever you want. I'll always be here, no matter how little you give back. And that's when people stop valuing you. Because what is always present becomes background noise. What is always accessible becomes disposable. Psychologists call this the law of scarcity. We instinctively place more value on what we have limited access to. It's not manipulation. It's not game playing. It's human nature. And when you are always emotionally available, when your energy is given without discretion, you become common, used, depleted. Here's the harsh truth. People don't treat you based on your intentions. They treat you based on your patterns. And if your pattern is to always say yes, to always answer the phone, to always drop what you're doing for others, then don't be surprised when no one checks to see if you're okay. This isn't about bitterness. It's about balance. It's about realizing that your emotional energy is currency, and you've been giving it away like it's infinite. But it's not. It's limited, precious. And when you start to see it that way, everything changes. Part 2. The shift, when silence becomes power. Have you ever noticed how the room changes when someone stops talking? Not in anger, not in resentment, just silence, a calm withdrawal, an absence that says more than words ever could. It's unnerving, isn't it? Because we're used to noise. We're used to explanations, justifications, apologies. We're used to people giving us their emotional responses like vending machines. Push a button, get a reaction. But when someone stops reacting, stops answering, stops performing availability, everything shifts. Suddenly people become uncomfortable, curious, even desperate. Why? Because silence disrupts control. You see, most people don't just depend on your availability. They depend on your predictability. They know exactly how to trigger you, what to say to make you explain yourself, what button to press to get your attention. And when that pattern breaks, when you no longer respond on command, when your phone stays unanswered, your presence withdrawn, your energy protected, it creates psychological chaos. Now the power dynamics reverse. Those who once controlled you through guilt, urgency, or emotional pressure are now exposed. They don't know how to function without your compliance. And here's the wild part. They'll start chasing the very silence that drives them mad. This is why the Stoics valued stillness so deeply. To a Stoic, silence is not passive, it's a deliberate act. It's the refusal to be emotionally hijacked by the impulses of others. It's the art of detaching not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So, what happens when you stop being emotionally available? People project. They speculate. They ask, did I do something wrong? They say, you've changed. But the truth is, you didn't change. You returned to yourself. And the discomfort they feel isn't about you being distant. It's about them losing access to the part of you they could once manipulate. Let that sink in, because this is more than just silence. This is recalibration, a conscious decision to no longer be an open door, to no longer serve as an emotional cushion for people who offer nothing in return. And the beauty is, when you stop speaking just to soothe others, you begin to hear yourself. You begin to understand your own rhythms, your own thoughts, your own boundaries. That's where the power lives. Not in shouting, not in defending, but in becoming unavailable to everything that drains you. Part 3. The psychology of control. Here's something you need to understand. Most people don't love you. They love the way you make them feel. That's not cynicism, it's psychology. We live in a world where emotional comfort is currency, where people unconsciously use others as tools for validation, distraction, reassurance. And if you've spent your life being emotionally available, chances are, you've been someone's emotional crutch. Now think about this. What happens when a crutch disappears? The person limps. They fall. They get angry, not because the crutch was bad, but because they never learned how to stand on their own. That's what your withdrawal feels like to them. It's not that you're being cruel. It's that you're finally asking a question they're not ready to answer. Who are you without me constantly holding you up? You see, your availability becomes a tool in the hands of the insecure. They may not even know they're doing it, but they rely on your immediate responses to avoid confronting their own emptiness. Your yes becomes their permission to never grow. Your attention becomes their shield from silence. Your predictability becomes their emotional escape route. And when you remove yourself, when you stop replying right away, when you stop offering explanations, when you stop saying yes out of guilt, they get angry. They say, you're distant, you're cold, you've changed. But here's what they'll never admit. They're not mad that you changed. They're mad that they can no longer control you the way they used to. This is where Carl Jung comes in. Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, to be liked, to fit in. When we're always available, we're wearing that mask. We become the agreeable one, the reliable one, the nice guy, the people pleaser. But behind that mask, a soul that's exhausted, a man who's given so much of himself, he doesn't know where others end, and he begins. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. So when someone is irritated by your silence, when your boundary drives them into frustration, when your stillness provokes chaos in others, it's not about you. It's about them. It's their fear of losing control. It's their resistance to doing their own inner work. It's their panic when they realize they can no longer predict or possess you. And the moment you see this clearly, everything clicks. You weren't weak for being available. You were generous. But now it's time to stop being drained by people who never planned to refill you. Because the moment you stop being available is the moment the world shows you who's really with you, and who is just using your emotional presence as a mirror to avoid facing themselves. Part 4. The trap of approval. When yes becomes self-abandonment. Let's talk about the word yes. It sounds harmless, right? A kind gesture, a soft agreement, a green light for peace and harmony. But what if I told you that your yes is costing you everything? See, most of us say yes not because we mean it, but because we're afraid of what a no might bring. Disappointment, rejection, judgment. We think that saying yes makes us lovable, safe, approved. And that's the illusion. Because every time you say yes to something that violates your inner boundaries, you say no to yourself. It happens slowly, over years. You say yes to helping when you're tired. Yes to staying when your heart is already gone. Yes to being the emotional support for people who would never do the same for you. And what's left? Exhaustion, frustration, a deep, vague emptiness that creeps in when you're alone. You don't even know why you're angry half the time. Until one day it hits you. You've been abandoning yourself in the name of approval. Let me ask you this. Who taught you that your value comes from being needed? That your worth is tied to how quickly you respond, how much you give, how available you are? Probably early in life. Maybe from a parent who only praised you when you performed, or a teacher who rewarded silence and obedience, or a partner who loved the version of you that served their needs but ignored your own. This kind of conditioning creates what psychologists call a fawn response, where instead of fighting, fleeing, or freezing, you cope by pleasing. You become agreeable, helpful, emotionally available, even when it hurts. But here's the catch. Approval is a moving target. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you. Because no matter how much you give, someone will always want more. That's why Stoicism speaks so clearly about detachment. Not detachment from people, but from outcomes. From needing others to constantly validate your worth. From believing that peace lies in being liked rather than being aligned. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And the approval of others? That's one of those things. So here's the truth you need to hold on to. When you say no, when you stop being available, when you disappoint people in the name of protecting your peace, you are not being cruel. You are being authentic. You are choosing your wholeness over their comfort, your truth over their convenience. Because if your presence is only welcomed when it's easy, then your absence will reveal more than your words ever could. Part 5. The Rebirth. When distance creates respect. Let's get one thing straight. Distance doesn't create disconnection. It creates clarity. When you become less available, something fascinating happens. People begin to see you again, not as an accessory, not as an emotional utility, but as a mystery. Why? Because humans don't value what they have unlimited access to. We chase the scarce. We're drawn to the uncertain. It's not manipulation, it's psychology. When you were always available, people didn't have to think about what you meant to them. You were just there, ready to help, to listen, to respond. And in that constant presence, they lost the ability to appreciate you. But when you pull back, something inside them shifts. Your absence creates space for realization. Space for people to feel the weight of your presence, because now they can feel the weight of its absence. This is why Stoicism teaches non-reactivity. It's not silence as punishment, it's silence as power. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And where do we waste it most? In giving our emotional energy to people who never earned it. When you stop doing that, when you reserve your energy like something sacred, you stop being background noise and start being a signal. Clear, focused, magnetic. People begin to respect you not because you demanded it, but because your silence now speaks louder than your over-explaining ever did. And it doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. You stop chasing conversations that go nowhere. You stop begging to be understood. You stop trying to be everything for everyone. Instead, you become intentional. You become discerning with your time, your words, your presence. And that shift transforms your entire identity. You no longer feel guilty for saying no. You don't feel the urge to answer every call, every text, every emotional emergency. Because you've realized this truth. Your peace is not negotiable. And anyone who takes offense to your boundaries was never interested in your well-being. Only in your availability. Let them walk. Because those who respect your silence, those who honor your space, those are the ones who deserve your presence when you choose to give it. Not out of obligation, but out of alignment. So don't be afraid of becoming distant. Be afraid of becoming depleted. Because one leads to wholeness, the other to self-destruction. Part 6. Becoming who you were meant to be. There's a process that both Carl Jung and the Stoics speak to. A quiet transformation that happens when a man finally stops bending to the world around him. It's called individuation, not isolation, not disconnection, but integration. It's the process of becoming whole, of stripping away every false layer, the people pleaser, the helper, the fixer, the one who's always available, and revealing what's underneath. A grounded man who no longer needs to be needed to feel valuable. You see, when you're always emotionally available, you're never truly with yourself. You become scattered, a piece of you here, a piece of you there, until your soul is fragmented across the lives of everyone you're trying to please. Individuation is when you call those pieces back. It's when you stop reacting to every emotional spark around you. When you stop trying to manage how others feel. When you let people be disappointed in you and still sleep peacefully at night. because now you've made peace within. That's what the Stoics meant by living in accordance with nature. Not the external world, but your internal nature, your values, your reason, your truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But how can your thoughts be clear when your emotional availability lets everyone else pour noise into your mind? Individuation means choosing solitude not as escape, but as power. It means being okay with being misunderstood, unseen, even unloved. If that's the price of being authentic. Because once you stop being available to the world's demands, you become available to your own destiny. And here's the secret no one talks about. When you become unavailable in the right way, not out of bitterness, but out of boundaries, you start to attract different energy. People notice, not because you're louder, but because your silence now holds weight. Because your no is no longer negotiable. Because your yes means something real. You've stopped being a mirror reflecting everyone else's needs. Now you're a flame, self-contained, warm, but untouchable unless someone earns the right to come closer. That is the essence of individuation. Not a man who is above others, but a man who is no longer beneath himself. Part 7. The growth that happens when you choose yourself. Imagine this. You've always said yes. Always been there when someone needed you. But deep inside, you're tired. Tired of giving, tired of reacting, tired of being the person everyone expects you to be. Now you choose to pull back. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You might even feel guilty, as if you're abandoning people. But here's the truth. You can't pour from an empty cup. And for too long, you've been running on fumes, trying to fulfill everyone's needs at the expense of your own. Self-care isn't just a buzzword. It's a philosophy rooted in wisdom. It's about recognizing that your emotional energy is a limited resource, and you must protect it. So when you stop being so emotionally available, you start prioritizing yourself. You begin to invest in your own growth, your own well-being, your own peace of mind. Suddenly, you have time for things that matter. You pick up hobbies you abandoned. You dive deeper into your passions. You start learning again. You discover parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. By becoming unavailable to others, you become available to the most important person in your life, you. And here's the beauty of this shift. The more you honor yourself, the more others begin to respect you. People may initially resist. They might call you selfish. They might label you distant or cold. But the truth is, you're no longer serving their needs at the expense of your own peace. And that's a lesson in itself. As you establish your boundaries, you teach others how to respect you. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop ignoring your own needs in order to keep the peace. You stop sacrificing your well-being for the comfort of others. In the process, you start attracting the right people. Those who respect your space, your boundaries, and your time. And more importantly, you begin to form healthier relationships. Relationships based on mutual respect, trust, and emotional honesty. You stop settling for shallow connections based on convenience. Instead, you build deeper, more meaningful relationships where both parties bring value to each other's lives. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it happens. And it starts with you choosing yourself over the approval of others. Part 8. The fine line between detachment and coldness. Here's a truth most people never stop to think about. There's a fine, nearly invisible line between detachment and coldness. And walking that line with wisdom is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Detachment is a form of inner strength. It's not about shutting down your emotions or building walls so high that no one can reach you. No, that's not detachment, that's fear in disguise. That's what happens when people confuse control with power. True detachment, on the other hand, is grounded, rooted in clarity. It's a conscious choice to protect your peace without becoming bitter. It's when you say to yourself, I will no longer hand over the keys to my emotions just because someone else feels entitled to them. But coldness is different. Coldness is reactionary. It's what happens when someone's been hurt too often, and instead of healing, they choose to shut down. Coldness comes from resentment, from suppressed pain that's never been processed. And while it might look like strength on the surface, it's actually just emotional armor, heavy, rigid, and deeply isolating. So here's the distinction. Detachment is born from awareness. Coldness is born from avoidance. Detachment says, I see everything clearly, and I choose peace. Coldness says, I refuse to feel because I'm afraid of being hurt again. The problem is, to the outside world, they often look the same. When you stop responding to every text, when you no longer react emotionally to other people's drama, when you start saying no more often than yes, people begin to notice. Some will say you've changed. Some will accuse you of being distant or selfish. But what they're really reacting to is your growth. They're feeling the discomfort of no longer being able to control you with emotional guilt or predictable reactions. But don't let that guilt pull you back in, because here's what they'll never admit. When you become detached in a healthy way, it forces others to confront themselves. And that's uncomfortable for them. You become a mirror, not by saying anything, but simply by refusing to engage in old dynamics that drained you. That's the power of Stoic detachment. It's quiet, it's calm, and it doesn't seek validation. The Stoics weren't cold men. They weren't disconnected from life. They simply understood that emotions must be acknowledged, not obeyed. That peace is found not in being numb, but in being aware and unbothered. And the people who truly value you, the ones who are aligned with your soul, not just your usefulness, they will understand. They will respect your boundaries. They won't demand explanations for your silence, because they know that your withdrawal isn't about punishment, it's about protection. And it's about preservation of your energy, your focus, your self-respect. So here's the takeaway. You're not obligated to carry every emotion that tries to land on your shoulders. You're not heartless for choosing your peace. You're not cold for stepping back from chaos. You are simply remembering who you are and choosing to live from a place of intention, not reaction. Because when you master the art of healthy detachment, something profound happens. You no longer chase peace. You become it. Part 9. Emotional Mastery. How unavailability leads to true power. True power isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't shout to be heard. True power is silent, still, and deeply rooted in emotional mastery. And that's the secret most people miss. They confuse power with dominance, noise, or control over others. But those things are superficial, temporary, reactionary. The man who controls the room is not the one who speaks the most. It's the one who knows when not to speak. Not because he's afraid, but because he understands the weight of his energy. You see, emotional mastery is about one thing: controlling yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your internal narrative. Because if you can't lead yourself, you'll forever be led by your circumstances. Now think about what happens when you're always emotionally available. You become a puppet, your strings pulled by guilt, by fear, by approval seeking. Someone gets angry, and you feel compelled to calm them. Someone gets sad, and you feel responsible for their happiness. Someone criticizes you, and suddenly your day is ruined. You hand over your emotional state like it's public property, and in doing so, you lose your sovereignty. But here's the shift. When you stop being emotionally available on demand, you begin reclaiming your internal power. You stop being so quick to explain yourself. You stop responding to every emotional invitation. You start filtering your energy. You begin to choose carefully where your attention goes. This is where Stoicism shines. The Stoics didn't advocate emotional suppression. They taught emotional discipline. A Stoic doesn't pretend he feels nothing. He simply refuses to be ruled by what he feels. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the whole philosophy in one sentence. You stop allowing other people's moods to dictate your mood. You stop reacting out of fear of being misunderstood. You stop being triggered by every little jab or passive-aggressive comment. You become steady, still, grounded. And it's in this unavailability, in your pause, in your non-reaction, that your true power is revealed. Because once you learn to hold space for your emotions without being consumed by them, you become a force in the world. You walk into rooms and people feel your presence, not because you're demanding attention, but because your energy speaks louder than your words ever could. And here's something few understand. Most people are emotionally reactive. They're constantly scanning their environment, waiting for validation, approval, or signs of rejection. Their nervous systems are in a state of hypervigilance. And that's why they lash out, panic, overshare, or try to manipulate. But when you step back, when you stop giving immediate emotional responses, it disrupts that dynamic. It forces people to confront themselves. And sometimes it even heals them because you're no longer feeding into their chaos. You're no longer available for emotional entanglement. And that's when your relationships change. You stop attracting people who need you to emotionally babysit them. You stop entertaining chaos. You begin drawing in people who value depth, not drama. Stillness, not stimulation. Substance, not performance. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean you become emotionally distant or uncaring. Emotional mastery doesn't mean becoming robotic. It means feeling fully, but choosing wisely what deserves your reaction and what deserves your restraint. And here's where the transformation happens. The moment you stop being so available to the world's emotional noise, your inner world becomes clearer. You gain space to reflect, to think, to create instead of just respond, to lead instead of follow, to command respect instead of chase validation. And slowly, something incredible begins to happen. People start looking to you differently. They sense your groundedness, your restraint, your ability to hold your center even when others lose theirs. You become the calm in the storm. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. You mastered yourself. And that is the greatest power a person can ever hold. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to fix someone else's discomfort, to immediately respond to emotional chaos, pause, breathe, remember who you are, and ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Or is this the perfect moment to practice the power of unavailability? Because in that pause, you reclaim your freedom, and in that freedom, you discover the quiet strength of emotional mastery. The closing chapter, becoming the man who no longer explains himself. So now here we are. You've seen what happens when you're always available. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You've witnessed the slow erosion of your energy. The subtle way the world chips away at your self-worth by convincing you that you owe it everything. Your time, your thoughts, your attention, your peace. But now you understand something most people never will. You don't owe anyone your constant availability. In fact, the greatest transformation begins the moment you stop being so easy to reach, so quick to respond, so desperate to explain. There's a shift that happens when a man stops chasing approval, when he stops responding to every text immediately, stops answering questions that are really just traps, stops explaining himself to people who have already made up their minds. Because let's be honest, most people don't want your truth. They want your compliance. They want you to stay predictable, pliable, easy to control. But you're not that man anymore. You're not the emotional vending machine people press when they need comfort. You're not the emotional janitor cleaning up everyone's mess at the expense of your own sanity. You're not the open book anyone can read without permission. You are becoming the mystery, the man who holds his energy sacred, who understands the power of withdrawal, not as a punishment, but as an elevation. And here's the part they never tell you. When you stop being emotionally available to everyone, your value increases. Not because you're playing games, but because people start to realize what it costs to lose your presence. They begin to reflect, to notice, to miss what was once constant and taken for granted. Suddenly your no becomes respected. Your silence becomes powerful. Your presence, when you do offer it, becomes a gift, not a given. And maybe that's the man you were meant to become all along. A man who isn't available to every opinion, who isn't moved by every emotional wave, who doesn't explain every decision as if his existence needs justification. A man of depth, of presence, of clarity. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It doesn't mean you become cold, distant, or emotionally shut off. It means you choose with intention. It means you preserve your energy like a sacred resource, not a free-for-all. Because what you now understand is that availability without discernment is self-abandonment. And that's the real lesson here. You've been taught your whole life to be the nice guy, the reliable one, the good man. But here's the hard truth. Being available to everyone all the time doesn't make you noble. It makes you a target, and over time, it makes you resentful. Because deep down, a part of you knows you're betraying yourself to keep the peace. But now you're reclaiming your peace. You're learning that stillness is strength. That non-reaction is power. That silence is a language only the self-aware truly understand. You're no longer reacting out of insecurity. You're responding from sovereignty. You're no longer proving your worth. You're standing in it. So let the world misunderstand your silence. Let people call you distant, weird, mysterious. Let them wonder what changed. Because what changed was everything. You no longer explain yourself because your life is no longer a negotiation. Your worth is not a debate. Your energy is not up for grabs. This is the new you. A man who has stepped into stillness, chosen solitude over noise, clarity over chaos. And the truth is, the world doesn't need more emotionally reactive men. It needs more men like you. Grounded, present, silent when necessary, unshakable. So as this video ends, I want you to remember just one thing. When you stop being available, everything doesn't fall apart. It finally starts to fall into place. Your peace returns. Your clarity sharpens. Your energy rises. And your true self, the man you were meant to be, finally comes forward. Now go. Not to fix. Not to explain. Not to perform. But to live. Rooted. Grounded. Powerful. Because the world moves differently when you stop being available.